Welcome to Kitchen Table Finance, the podcast where we serve up bite-sized pieces of financial advice to simplify your money and your life. Join your hosts, David Shotwell and Nick Nauta, and let's get started.
Hey Dave, how you doing today?
I'm doing great, Nick. How are you?
Doing well, though I'm a little bit disappointed. I had a cold all week, and it gave me this great, grovelly, deep radio voice, and now it's getting better.
Now it's gone.
So
Yeah,
I had my chance. I was going to make the big times with my voice.
Next thing you know, you'd be on NPR doing the morning.
Yeah. I guess I could just, smoke a couple packs of cigarettes.
You could, go on take the Tom Waits approach, and you'll get there.
Anyways, we got a great topic today. One of my favorites, as you know, Dave, and that is just kind of talking through traditional financial planning versus life planning, or our brand of planning, and kind of spelling out what some of those differences are and why you and I think it's so important in terms of, why we do planning the way that we do.
Right.
So with that, you want to kind of talk through what we would consider traditional financial planning?
Yeah. So I think rather than traditional financial planning, and the way to think about the way we characterize that is that's what most people consider financial planning.
Sure. Yeah.
There's numbers, there's spreadsheets, there's projections, scenarios. And, I'm going to say up front, we still do all of that. It's a very important part of what we do.
For sure.
It's technical problem solving. Client has XYZ portfolio and needs to know how much income they can expect, when can they retire, how are we going to deal with taxes, all the typical financial planning problems, and math, lots of math.
Yeah.
Which when I went into this business, my mom said, there's going to be math. And so maybe that's why I'm where I'm at. Where we do the math, but we focus on the bigger picture. But so common components: portfolio allocation, retirement projections, insurance analysis, tax strategies. The big question is from clients overall is, are we maximizing, optimizing for the right things? Are we working towards a realistic retirement goal?
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And even this, traditional, air quotes, traditional financial planning has come a long way, right? Because it used to be, in some cases it still is, here's how you allocate your investment portfolio, right? There's a lot more that goes into what we would consider financial planning now, even in the last, 5 to 10 years.
Financial planning as a profession is very young and grew out of investment planning, which grew out of investment sales,
right?
To be honest. So,
for sure.
The fact that it's come so far so fast in the course of the last 25 years, I think is actually amazing.
Right. Yeah. When we talk about life planning, or when we talk about taking that next step, it's kind of this thought process of all those things that we just talked about are important. We do it for all of our clients. We spend a lot of our time educating ourselves and getting better at those different technical aspects.
Mm-hmm.
But from a client perspective and just behavioral finance in general, we kind of have to ask the question of, what is this all for, right?
Right.
And to steal from Carl Richards a little bit, are we climbing the ladder on the wrong wall, right? How do we know that all these things that we're doing or implementing are what the client wants, or what's going to get them closer to what their ultimate goals are, right? And that's where the life planning approach comes in. And it's not and I want to make sure that our listeners know it's not one or the other. We kind of think both of these things are a part of the overall process. But before we get to all the technical stuff, before we get to portfolio allocations and retirement projections and insurance and tax strategies, we really need to start with your values and what's most important to you. And I know that I've said this probably at least a dozen or more times on this podcast. But if it's just about the numbers, right? Like I have the answer, you're just not going to like it,
Yeah,
because in
right.
order to build your net worth to the maximum, you should be living in a cardboard box, spending as little as possible and saving and investing every last dollar.
Yeah.
But nobody's taking me up on that. And so what is that balance of, like, what does this money mean? How do we use it as a tool to get a better return on life so that we can do the things that we want to do right now and in 10 and 15 and 20 years from now? And that all kind of starts with this life planning process of having those conversations, taking that time to actually think about what it means to live a meaningful life, and having that space to kind of think through all of those things that you want to do with this very precious little time that you have on earth, and then start to prioritize those too, right? Because everybody can think of a million different things they want to do, but how do we then prioritize those and get those down to, like, I need to have this in my life in order to be happy, versus, hey, that'd be really cool to climb Mount Everest, but if I don't ever get to it, I'm okay with that, right? Like whatever
Right.
that is.
Right.
And so that's the kind of the second phase of prioritizing those goals, and then getting really clear on the vision of what you want to see happen in the next couple of years. And I say next couple of years because, and we've talked about this too, Dave, it's very hard as humans. We're very, very poor at kind of forecasting what we want out of life
Mm-hmm.
and when we talk like 5 to 10 years from now, versus, the next 1 to 3 years. And so having that 1 to 3 year vision of, hey, this is exactly what I need to do over the next couple of years.
Yeah.
Really kind of sets the stage to motivate you to do the things that you need to do, make some of those sacrifices and make changes in life, but also B, like, it's not so far away that you don't have to worry about it, because if it's too far away, then it's just kind of not in the everyday, your everyday thought process, and then it kind of gets lost in the shuffle.
The way I like to think about, back to what we were talking about as traditional planning versus life planning, is you've got strategy and you've got tactics.
Yep.
And traditional financial planning is all about the tactics.
Right.
Oh, we want to save on taxes, so our tactics should be a Roth conversion because it will do X, Y, Z for
Right.
you, in your 70s or 80s. But life planning is the strategy.
Yep.
And from if we think about it in those terms, you've got to have the strategy in place to know what tactics to use. I
Yeah.
think that's the driving force there. So
For sure.
to stick with the Roth conversion idea, we can run our fancy software and tell somebody exactly how to minimize their taxes over their lifetime through Roth conversions of certain amounts in certain years, but that only matters if it aligns with how they plan to spend that money and use that money.
Right.
So that's kind of where we see the importance come in. Other aspects of it, we see all the time. We see people saving into their retirement plans because when they were 25, they were told that's what they need to do. And then they're cruising into their 50s or early 60s with enough to sustain them through 2 lifetimes of their
Right.
retirement spending,
Yeah.
and they missed out on a lot of fun along the way.
Sure.
I like the way you've put it as burnout from chasing
Mm-hmm.
arbitrary financial goals.
Mm-hmm.
It gets old. It's not as much
Yeah.
fun. So if you can get real clear on what's important to you in terms of strategy, then the tactics of, should I be saving 10% or 15% into my 403b? Should I be saving 5% of that into the Roth portion of my 403b? Like, then we can start getting real about the answers, because we know what the overall strategy that you're driving to reach looks like.
Yeah. No, you're so right. And it's just this, in traditional financial planning, when you think of like the marketing behind it, from a lot of like the big banks and brokerage firms and things like that, of like, hey, if you save all this money, at some point you'll be able to retire at 65 with 90% of your pre-retirement income, right? Like, what the hell does that even mean? Who wants that?
Yeah.
Like,
Right.
I mean, yeah, you do, but like, that doesn't mean anything. Like, what is that? Like, what does 90% of your retirement income mean to you? What are you
Yeah.
going to do with that, right? Like, having those conversations and figuring out how you want to live your ideal life, I think, is kind of the part that gets missed. And to your point about like saving X amount, and when you have created that vision that we talked about, then it's not necessarily like, hey, mathematically, what is the best answer? It's what's going to get you closer to your goal of being able to live stress free at age 60, or
Yeah.
being able to stop working if you want to at age 60. Not that you
Yeah.
have to. Like, if is that your goal? Like, what is going to get us closer to that, as opposed to, hey, just pile as much money as you can in here,
Right.
and at 65 you'll be fine,
Right. Well, and we see quite often people come in with goals that aren't really their goals.
Mm-hmm.
They're goals that have been presupposed by rules around Social Security and Medicare and just traditional workplace, everybody retires from here at 65.
Right.
Those don't have anything to do with you as a person. They have to do with, the structure around you.
Yeah.
And sometimes that's important, of course. We've still
Mm-hmm.
got to play by the rules, right?
Right.
But
For sure.
when you start actually looking at what's important to you, you can look beyond those structures to figure out, like, or within those structures, like, what's the best tactics to get you from, to closer to what you want. um,
Yeah.
and also too, like, aligning what actually makes you happy with how you use your money.
Right.
And a lot of folks, I don't want to be, yeah, well, in your working years, it's like you're saving and then you're consuming, right?
Mm-hmm.
And some of that consumption isn't necessarily driving happiness. It's just what you do,
Yeah.
as middle class Americans.
Right.
And so also life planning, I think, has a component of really thinking about, okay, if I'm going to have, you know X thousand dollars a month available to me in retirement, what's the best use of those funds?
Right.
Whether it's continuing to do what you've done because that is what makes you happy, or
Right.
redirecting it to experiences or doing things with your grandkids, or taking care of causes you care about, or whatever
Mm-hmm.
that is. But just being deliberate about it makes a difference too.
Yeah, absolutely. And continuing on that conversation about retirement, and stealing this from Mitch Anthony, but like,
Mm.
he always says, what's the point of, retiring at 65 if you get there and you got four flat tires? Like,
Yeah.
what?
Yeah.
So, and how do you think about that in terms of your goals and how you're saving and what you're doing and the strategies behind that? But first, you got to figure out, like, is 65 a number that I came up with, or is it that I feel good about, or is it just something that I assumed because that's when Medicare kicks in and I have health insurance, right? And the flip side of that can be true too. Like, if you want to work into your 70s because you love your job,
Yeah.
well, maybe we don't need to save 20%
Yeah.
into your 401k because
Yeah.
you're going to work a long time, and so you don't need that much money, and so you can redirect that to take a 2 week big trip every year. And now, when you're younger and healthier, then especially if you plan on working that long. So there's a lot of things that go into it, and those are
Right.
completely different conversations for people,
Right.
and completely different financial planning strategies tactically that would happen for somebody who wants to retire early or be able to, versus someone who loves working and wants to do it as long as they can.
You could have two identical, on paper, households,
Mm-hmm.
same portfolios, same job, same incomes, and same spending needs, even, but needs. But when you start talking about what's important to them and what they value, you get completely different outcomes in terms of what you should be doing for them, from a
Right.
tactical standpoint.
Yeah. Well, it's so funny because it's if you think about, like, the American way, if you will, of like looking over your fence at your neighbor, and like they're maybe in the same situation as you, and you're thinking, well, I got to do what they do and maybe I'll be happy. And
Right.
they're probably thinking the same thing, on the other side of the fence, and
Yeah.
you're both driving yourself crazy because that's the other thing that we do a terrible job as, is slowing down and thinking about what this all actually means and what we want to get out of it, instead of just looking across the fence and saying, well, that guy's got a nice new truck and that would make me happy, right? Like, we just don't do a very good job of taking the time and thinking through what that means.
Yeah.
So with that, Dave, what I would say as far as getting started goes, there's a lot of different kind of ways that you can do this on your own. George Kinder, who I studied under, and you did as well, Dave, to get the registered life planning designation. He has a book that he put out called Life Planning for You, and there's actually a website that will walk you through kind of the steps of how to start taking time and thinking about those things. And I guess it's just a good starting point that I'd like for people too, is just spending some time with your spouse, or by yourself, just thinking about what you want out of retirement. A great kind of first question is just imagining that you're financially secure, that you have enough money to take care of your needs now and in the future. The question then is, how would you live your life? Would you change anything? Let yourself go. Don't hold back on your dreams, and describe a life that is complete, that is richly yours. And just start taking some time and thinking through some of this stuff. And
Right.
I like that question because it's really kind of wide reaching, of just thinking of all the different things, right? And then you can go through the rest of the process at Life Planning for You. If it's a great place to start. It's certainly going to help. With the one thing that I would advise, in just thinking about it, and this is from personal experience, yes, you can do it on your own, but it is very, very challenging, and the outcomes generally are much better if you work with someone, a professional who is trained in helping you go through that process. And I say this because I've done it by myself and I've done it with a professional. And I will tell you, the outcomes are much better when you have someone that can help walk you through that and help motivate you. And, that is something that you just don't get from doing it on your own. We're sometimes our own worst enemy when it comes to that
Right.
stuff. And so having somebody that can help you, super beneficial in terms of the pure life planning part of things.
Yeah, it's interesting because we're talking about a very subjective thing, but having an objective voice to help you work through it, I think, is um, what you're getting at there. Some people can pull off that level of introspection on their
Sure.
own, but that's pretty rare. Um, and
Yeah.
I know, as a practitioner trying to do my own financial planning, I'm my own worst client, and
Yeah.
it's just that's the bottom line. So it's good to have a starting place and give this, at least put some thought into it on your own. But
Yeah.
there's also professionals there to help.
For sure. Well, it's interesting because as you're going through this, you're probably going to be thinking about a lot of things that you've thought about before and just have never done anything with. And sometimes you just need somebody that's like, yeah, yes, you can do that.
Yeah.
You should do that, as a matter of fact, right?
Yeah.
Like the power of that is immense in a lot of cases.
Yeah.
It's one of the reasons why I don't believe that AI will ever take over our jobs, because you can go to the computer right now and get all the information, but it's not the same as having somebody tell you that you can do it, and a real, actual live person. So,
Right.
But I digress. We don't need to dive into that today. Otherwise, this 20-minute podcast will turn into 2 hours. So,
not us.
With that, Dave, I think, this, hopefully people get kind of an understanding of why we do life planning. And as you're searching for a potential financial planner, trying to find someone that's going to help you not only with the technical stuff and kind of have that, but also how do they bridge the gap between helping you figure out what you actually want out of life and what that actually means for your tactics and strategies and the things that you're going to do from a financial standpoint. So if you're listening and that's you, feel free to go out to our website, www.srbadvisors.com, and you can schedule some time with us, and we would love to kind of walk you through how we do that. With that, Dave, Always a pleasure, my friend.
Thanks, Nick. It was fun.
Thank you for joining us for another chat about your retirement and finances. Please hit that subscribe button. You can also contact us at srbadvisors.com or email us at info@srbadvisors.com. See you next time on Kitchen Table Finance.